The distress signal came through the quantum relay at 0347 hours, crackling with desperation across 17 light-years of empty space. Commander Sarah Chun stood in the communication hub of a UES Defiant, watching the holographic display flicker with an alien script that the ship's computers struggled to translate. "Ma'am, the translation matrix is having difficulty with the syntax," reported Lieutenant Torres, his fingers dancing across the control interface. "But the emotional markers are clear. This is a plea for help." Chen's weathered face remained impassive as she studied the scrolling text. 23 years in the United Earth Space Force had taught her to be cautious with alien communications. The galaxy was full of species that viewed humanity as either a threat or a resource to be exploited. Trust was a luxury they couldn't afford. "What's the source location?" she asked. "Kepler, 442 system, ma'am. The Zephyrian colony world of Talaxis Prime." Chen's eyebrows rose slightly. The Zephyrians were one of the few alien species that had maintained neutral relations with humanity. They were peaceful traders, known for their advanced medical technology and philosophical approach to conflict resolution. If they were calling for help, something serious was happening. "Lieutenant Kim, pull up everything we have on Talaxis Prime," Chen ordered. The tactical officer's hands moved swiftly over her console. Population approximately 4 million Zephyrians, mostly in agricultural and research settlements. No military installations of note. They've been trading partners with Earth for 12 years, never reported any hostile activity in their sector. The translation matrix chimed softly, indicating a breakthrough in the linguistic analysis. New text appeared on the display, this time in clear standard English. "To any vessels capable of military intervention, Talaxis Prime is under siege by unknown hostile forces. Our cities burn. Our people die. We have no weapons of war, no soldiers to defend us. We are a peaceful people who have never known such violence. Please, we beg for salvation. Our children cry in the darkness while death falls from the sky. Time grows short. We will not survive another solar cycle without aid." The bridge fell silent except for the steady hum of the ship's systems. Chun could feel the weight of the message settling over her crew like a heavy blanket. She'd seen enough war zones to know that desperate pleas like this were usually followed by the discovery of empty worlds and silent cities. "Ma'am," Torres said quietly, "there's more. The signal includes tactical data." Additional information flowed across the screens. Sensor readings showed massive ships in orbit around Talaxis Prime, their design unlike anything in the known databases. Energy signatures indicated sustained bombardment of the planet's surface, while smaller craft moved in atmospheric assault patterns. "Unknown configuration," Kim reported, analyzing the tactical data. "But the power readings are enormous. Whatever's attacking them has serious firepower." Chin studied the information with growing concern. The attacking fleet showed at least 30 capital ships, each one larger than anything in the human fleet. The bombardment patterns suggested they were methodically destroying infrastructure while avoiding total planetary annihilation. Someone wanted the planet intact, but the population eliminated or subjugated. "Ma'am, we're receiving another transmission," Torres announced. This time the message came with video. The holographic display shimmered and resolved into the image of a Zephyrian civilian shelter. The camera shook with nearby explosions as terrified faces looked up from the cramped space. Zephyrians were tall, graceful beings with pale blue skin and large, expressive eyes that seemed to hold the wisdom of ages. Now those eyes were filled with terror. An elderly Zephyrian stepped forward, his ceremonial robes torn and stained with dust. Chin recognized him from diplomatic files as High Counselor Vextari, one of the most respected leaders in Zephyrian society. "I am Vextari of the High Council," he said, his voice calm despite the chaos around him. "I speak for the 4 million souls who call Talaxis Prime home. We have lived in peace for 7 centuries, harming no one, seeking only knowledge and harmony with the universe. Today, ships came from the void. They gave no warning, made no demands. They simply began to kill." The image shook again as another explosion rocked the shelter. Dust fell from the ceiling as children pressed close to their parents. "We have no soldiers, no weapons of war. Our philosophy teaches us that all life is sacred, that violence breeds only more violence. But now we face extinction, and our beliefs offer no protection against those who would murder innocents. We have heard that humans possess great warriors, that you understand the necessity of fighting when all else fails. We do not ask you to abandon your duties. We only ask that if mercy lives in your hearts, please help us. Our children should not die for the crime of being born on a world that others desire. The transmission ended with a final image of Vextari placing his hand over his heart in the traditional Zephyrian gesture of absolute sincerity. Chun turned to her first officer, Major Jackson, who had been standing silently throughout the transmission. Jackson was a former Marine, and she could see the war calculations already running behind his eyes. Analysis, Major. Kepler, 442 is 16 hours at maximum burn, Jackson said. If we leave now, we might arrive in time to make a difference. But, ma'am, we're one ship against a fleet of 30-plus unknowns. The odds aren't good. Chen nodded grimly. The UES Defiant was a formidable vessel, one of the new Prometheus-class heavy cruisers that represented the cutting edge of human military technology. But, even with its advanced weaponry and experienced crew, it couldn't match the firepower of an entire invasion fleet. What about backup? Chen asked. Nearest Earth vessels are the patrol group at Wolf 359, Kim reported. That's Captain Rodriguez with 3 light cruisers. They're 48 hours away, even if they leave immediately. Any other human ships in the area? Negative, ma'am. We're it. Chen walked to the main viewing port, staring out at the starfield. The Zephyrians had been good allies to humanity. They'd shared medical technology that had extended human lifespan by 20 years and helped develop the quantum communication networks that made interstellar governance possible. They'd never asked for anything in return except peaceful trade and mutual respect. More importantly, they were being slaughtered by an unknown enemy that might set its sights on human worlds next. If these attackers could overwhelm a peaceful planet without warning, what would stop them from doing the same to Earth colonies? Ma'am, Torres said softly, I'm reading something else in the data stream. The attackers aren't just bombarding randomly. They're hitting specific targets. Research facilities, communication hubs, transportation networks. This looks like conquest, not extermination. They want the planet, Jackson mused. Question is, what makes Talaxis Prime worth this kind of military investment? Chen had been wondering the same thing. Talaxis Prime was pleasant, but unremarkable, with no strategic resources or tactical advantages that she knew of. The Zephyrians were valuable for their knowledge, but that knowledge was already shared across dozens of worlds through their extensive academic networks. Lieutenant Kim, scan our intelligence files for any recent Zephyrian discoveries or research projects, Chen ordered. Kim's fingers flew over her console. Ma'am, there's several ongoing projects. Agricultural optimization, stellar cartography, medical research, wait. There's a classified notation here. Project Sanctuary. Explain. Details are restricted, but it appears the Zephyrians have been working on some kind of advanced defensive technology. The file mentions revolutionary applications for planetary security systems. Chun felt a chill run down her spine. If the Zephyrians had developed some new form of defensive technology, that would explain the sudden attack. Someone wanted that technology badly enough to commit genocide to obtain it. Ma'am, incoming priority transmission from Earth Command, Torres announced. Admiral Harrison's weathered face appeared on the communication screen, his expression grim. Chen had served under Harrison for 8 years and had never seen him look so concerned. Commander Chun, we've received the Zephyrian distress call. What's your status? 16 hours out, at maximum burn, sir. Analysis suggests we're looking at a large-scale invasion by unknown hostiles. Harrison nodded. We've been analyzing the sensor data they transmitted. These ships don't match any known configurations, but the technology appears to be on par with or possibly superior to our own. Intel suggests they may be after Zephyrian research data, specifically Project Sanctuary. Sir, we only have limited information on that project. Because it's that classified, Commander. The Zephyrians have developed a defensive shield technology that could revolutionize planetary defense. If it falls into the wrong hands, every human world becomes vulnerable. Chun felt the weight of the situation settling on her shoulders. This wasn't just about saving Zephyrian civilians anymore. This was about preventing a strategic catastrophe that could threaten all of human space. What are your orders, sir? Harrison was quiet for a long moment. This is a volunteer mission, Commander. I can't order you to take one ship against an entire invasion fleet. The odds of survival are minimal. Chen looked around her bridge at the faces of her crew. These were veteran spacers who had signed up to defend humanity and its allies. They'd taken an oath to stand against tyranny wherever it threatened innocent life. "Sir, the Zephyrians saved my daughter's life with their medical technology," Chen said quietly. She was dying of cellular degeneration until their treatments gave her a normal lifespan. They've been good friends to humanity, and they're being murdered by unknown hostiles who might target us next. With respect, sir, this isn't really a choice. Harrison's expression softened slightly. "I was hoping you'd say that. Be advised, the Marine transport UES Fury is 12 hours behind you, with a full battalion of Colonial Marines aboard. Captain Morrison is under orders to provide any assistance you require." Chen's heart lifted slightly. The Colonial Marines were humanity's elite rapid response force, trained for exactly this kind of impossible mission. If anyone could help even the odds, it would be them. "Understood, sir. We're proceeding to Talaxis Prime immediately. Good luck, Commander. Earth is counting on you." The transmission ended, leaving Chen alone with her crew and the magnitude of their task. She turned to address the bridge. "You heard the situation," she said. "We're going to help the Zephyrians, and we're probably going to face overwhelming odds doing it. Anyone who wants to transfer to another assignment can do so now with no questions asked." Not a single crew member moved. Chun felt a surge of pride in her people. This was why humanity was becoming a force to be reckoned with in the galaxy. When the chips were down and innocent lives were at stake, humans didn't calculate odds or weigh political advantages. They did what was right. "Very well," Chun said. "All hands to battle stations. Set course for Kepler, 442, maximum burn. And somebody give me everything we can find about Project Sanctuary. If we're going to save the Zephyrians, we need to know what we're really fighting for." The Defiant's massive engines roared to life, propelling the ship toward an uncertain fate. Behind them, Earth grew smaller until it was just another point of light in a vast darkness. Ahead lay a world under siege, and an enemy that had never faced the fury of human Marines when innocent lives hung in the balance. The aliens had begged for salvation. Now, they were about to discover what happened when humans answered that call. The UES Defiant dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler 442 system, and Commander Chen immediately knew they were too late to prevent a catastrophe. The tactical display lit up with dozens of hostile contacts orbiting Talaxis Prime, while the planet itself glowed with the orange light of burning cities. "Jesus Christ," Lieutenant Kim whispered, her voice barely audible above the bridge's ambient noise. Chun stood behind the tactical station, studying the horrific scene before them. Massive alien warships hung in orbit like predatory birds, their dark hulls bristling with weapon emplacements. Smaller craft swarmed through the atmosphere, raining destruction on the surface below. The Zephyrian orbital defense platforms that should have protected the planet were nothing but expanding clouds of debris. "Sensor analysis, Lieutenant Torres," Chun ordered, forcing her voice to remain steady. 37 hostile capital ships confirmed, ma'am. Average length 800 meters, tonnage approximately twice our own. They're using some kind of plasma bombardment system that I've never seen before. Energy output is enormous. Chen's jaw tightened. The Defiant was a powerful ship, but against odds like these, it would last perhaps minutes in direct combat. They needed a different approach. "Any sign of survivors on the surface?" Kim worked her console frantically, reading scattered life signs in underground areas. The major cities are mostly rubble, but there's still Zephyrian biomarkers in what look like shelter complexes. A new contact appeared on the edge of sensor range, and Chun felt a surge of hope. The massive bulk of the UES Fury was dropping out of hyperspace, its hull scarred from a dozen campaigns across human space. "Incoming transmission from Captain Morrison," Torres reported. The gruff face of the Marine commander appeared on the main screen. Captain James Morrison was a legend in the Corps, a man who had led impossible missions and brought his people home against all odds. His weathered features and steel-gray eyes spoke of countless battles fought in the defense of human space. "Commander Chun, I see we've got ourselves a situation here," Morrison said, his voice carrying the distinctive growl of a career Marine. "My boys are locked and loaded. What's the tactical picture?" "Overwhelming enemy force, minimal friendly assets, unknown technology," Chen replied. The Zephyrians are trapped in underground shelters while the hostiles systematically destroy surface infrastructure. Morrison nodded grimly. Classic invasion pattern. They want the planet intact, but the population pacified. Question is, how do we spoil their party with 2 ships against their entire fleet? Before Chin could respond, a new transmission crackled through the communication system. This time it came from the hostile fleet, and the voice that emerged was unlike anything in the human database of known species. The alien speaker's words came through the translation matrix as a series of harsh, guttural sounds that resolved into coldly precise standard English. Human vessels, you will withdraw from this system immediately. This world belongs to the hegemony now. Your interference will not be tolerated. Chun studied the tactical display showing the alien fleet. Several of the larger ships were turning to face the human vessels, their weapon systems powering up. Unknown vessel. This is Commander Sarachan of the United Earth Space Force, she replied. You are attacking the sovereign territory of a peaceful species. Withdraw your forces immediately, and we will not fire upon you. The response came back laced with what could only be described as amusement. Humans, we have studied your species. You make threats you cannot fulfill, and protect those who cannot protect themselves. Your ship will be destroyed if you do not leave within 60 of your time periods. Shin looked at Morrison's face on the split screen. The Marine captain's expression had shifted from concern to something much more dangerous. Ma'am, Morrison said quietly, my Marines didn't come 16 light years to watch civilians get slaughtered by alien bullies. Whatever you're planning, the Corps is with you. Shin made her decision. All stations, battle alert. Morrison, I need your people ready for immediate deployment. We're going to give these bastards a lesson in what happens when you threaten innocence in front of human Marines. The bridge erupted in controlled chaos as the crew prepared for combat. Chin knew the odds were impossible, but she also knew something the alien commander didn't. Humans had a long history of doing impossible things when the stakes were high enough. Ma'am, I'm detecting movement in the underground complexes, Kim reported. It looks like the Zephyrians are trying to transmit something to us. The main screen flickered and resolved into the image of High Counselor Vextari, now broadcasting from what appeared to be a heavily damaged command bunker. His robes were torn and stained, but his eyes burned with desperate hope. Human ships, praise the cosmic harmony that you have come, he said. Our surface defenses are gone, our cities burn, but we still live. There is something you must know about why they came. The image wavered as explosions shook the bunker. Project Sanctuary was not just a defensive system. We developed a way to neutralize aggressive technologies, to turn weapons of war into tools of peace. The hegemony seeks this knowledge to prevent others from defending themselves against their expansion. Chun felt a chill run down her spine. If the aliens could prevent other species from developing defensive technologies, they could conquer the galaxy unopposed. The research data is stored in the deep vaults beneath our primary research facility, Vextari continued. We had hoped to share this gift with all peaceful species, but now we fear it will be turned into an instrument of oppression. We have activated the final protocols. In 6 of your hours, the facility will be destroyed rather than captured. If you can reach us before then. The transmission cut off abruptly as another massive explosion rocked the bunker. Shin turned to Morrison. Captain, can your Marines reach the surface? Morrison's eyes gleamed with the light of battle. Ma'am, my Marines can reach anywhere you need them to go. But we'll need a distraction to get through that orbital blockade. Chin studied the tactical display, her mind racing through possibilities. The enemy fleet was positioned to provide overlapping fire coverage of the entire planet. Any attempt to reach the surface would be met with overwhelming force. Lieutenant Kim, analysis of the alien weapon systems? Plasma-based energy weapons, ma'am. Devastating against shields and armor, but they require direct line of sight to be effective. An idea began to form in Chen's mind. What about the asteroid field on the edge of the system? Could we use it for cover? Torres checked his sensors. Negative, ma'am. The field is too sparse to provide meaningful concealment. Chen walked to the main viewing port, staring at the burning planet below. Somewhere down there, millions of innocent Zephyrians were dying while alien invaders prepared to steal technology that could doom countless other worlds to conquest. Ma'am, Kim said suddenly, I'm reading something interesting about the planet's magnetic field. It's unusually strong, and there are some kind of artificial fluctuations in the magnetosphere. Explain. It looks like the Zephyrians have been using magnetic field manipulation as part of their defensive systems. The generators are still active in some of the underground complexes. Chun felt a spark of inspiration. Morrison, what do you know about high-altitude, low-opening drops? The Marine captain grinned fiercely. My boys wrote the book on halo drops, ma'am. What did you have in mind? The enemy fleet is focused on preventing ships from reaching the surface, Chun explained. But what if we don't take ships down? Morrison's grin widened. You want my Marines to drop from orbit during a space battle? The magnetic field fluctuations should disrupt their targeting systems long enough for your people to reach the surface. Once you're planetside, you can use the terrain to avoid their orbital bombardment. Ma'am, Morrison said, his voice carrying deadly serious undertones. That's the craziest plan I've heard in 30 years of military service. My Marines will love it. Chun turned back to her crew. All right, people, we're going to give the Marines a window to reach the surface. That means we need to draw the attention of 37 capital ships and survive long enough for the drop to succeed. The Defiance weapon systems came online with a thrumming vibration that could be felt throughout the ship. The new plasma cannons and quantum torpedoes represented the pinnacle of human military technology, but Chun knew they would need more than advanced weapons to survive what was coming. Torres, I want you to coordinate with Morrison's people on drop trajectories. Kim, plot an attack run that will draw maximum enemy attention away from the Marines' landing zone. Jackson, prepare emergency jump coordinates in case we need to retreat. Ma'am, Jackson said quietly. Once we engage, there won't be any retreat. They'll hunt us down long before our jump drives can recharge. Chun nodded grimly. She'd known from the moment they entered the system that this would likely be a one-way mission. But the Zephyrians had begged for salvation, and human Marines never abandon those who call for help. Incoming transmission from the enemy fleet, Torres announced. This time the alien voice carried unmistakable menace. Human vessels, your time has expired. You will be destroyed. All ships, Chun announced over the BattleNet. We are engaging a superior enemy force to protect innocent civilians and prevent strategic technology from falling into hostile hands. Marines, you are authorized for immediate deployment. Defiant, weapons free. The UES Defiant surged forward toward the massive enemy fleet, its plasma cannons charging with deadly energy. Behind it, the Fury launched dozens of atmospheric entry pods, each one carrying 12 of humanity's finest warriors toward a planet under siege. The aliens had demanded that the humans withdraw. Instead, they were about to learn what happened when human Marines answered a plea for salvation. The battle for Talaxis Prime was about to begin, and the galaxy would never be the same. As the first enemy shots reached out toward the Defiant, Chun gripped the rail beside her command chair and watched her crew work with practiced efficiency. They were outnumbered 30-1, facing unknown technology and impossible odds. In other words, it was just another day in the life of the human military. The aliens wanted a war. They were about to get one. The first alien plasma barrage lit up space like a miniature star going nova. Commander Chun watched the tactical display as dozens of energy beams reached out toward the Defiant, each one carrying enough power to vaporize a city block. Evasive maneuvers, Chun ordered, gripping her command chair as the ship rolled and twisted through the deadly light show. The Defiant's advanced maneuvering thrusters fired in precise bursts, sliding the massive vessel between the incoming plasma streams with grace that belied its size. Lieutenant Torres had plotted their approach perfectly, using the planet's magnetic field to disrupt enemy targeting while keeping them in the optimal firing position. Return fire, all weapons. Chun commanded. The ship's quantum torpedo tubes opened with mechanical precision, launching a spread of 6 warheads toward the nearest enemy capital ship. The Defiant's plasma cannons followed up with concentrated bursts that carved brilliant lines across the darkness of space. The quantum torpedoes struck the alien vessel's shields in a cascade of exotic energy that lit up its entire hull. For a moment, Chun thought they might have scored a decisive hit. Then, the enemy ship's weapons swiveled toward them, apparently undamaged, and unleashed a devastating counterattack. Shields down to 60%, reported Lieutenant Kim, her voice tight with concentration. That plasma technology is more advanced than our intelligence suggested. Chun studied the tactical display with growing concern. The Defiant's most powerful weapons had barely scratched the enemy's defenses, while their return fire was systematically overwhelming human shield technology. Morrison's Marines away, Torres announced. 48 entry pods launched successfully. On the main screen, Chun could see the tiny specks of the Marine drop pods falling toward Talaxis Prime like shooting stars. Each pod carried 12 warriors in full combat armor, equipped with enough firepower to level a small city. If anyone could reach the Zephyrin research facility and secure the critical data, it would be them. Sir, Kim called out urgently, multiple enemy contacts breaking from the main fleet. 6 ships moving to intercept the Marine landing zones. Chen's heart sank. The aliens had seen through their strategy and were moving to eliminate the Marines before they could reach the surface. The drop pods were heavily armored, but essentially defenseless during atmospheric entry. New heading, bearing 27 Mark IV. Chun ordered. We need to draw those ships away from the Marines. The Defiant changed course, diving toward the planet at a steep angle that brought it directly into the path of the intercepting alien vessels. The enemy commanders took the bait, concentrating their fire on the human cruiser instead of the vulnerable drop pods. Ma'am, we're taking heavy damage, Jackson reported as another plasma barrage slammed into their weakened shields. Hull breaches on decks 4 and 7. Engineering reports the port plasma array is offline. Chun watched the tactical display as red damage indicators spread across the ship's schematic like a deadly infection. They'd bought the Marines precious time, but the Defiant couldn't take much more punishment. Lieutenant Torres, patch me through to Captain Morrison. The Marine commander's voice crackled through the communication system over the sound of atmospheric entry. Chun, my boys are 30 seconds from touchdown. Whatever you're doing up there, keep it up for another minute. Copy that, Morrison. Give those bastards hell. Chun turned back to her tactical officer. Kim, what's our status on the main enemy fleet? 28 ships remaining in orbital position. 9 moving to engage us directly, Kim replied. Ma'am, we're not going to survive much longer under this kind of fire. Chun knew Kim was right. The Defiant was a powerful ship, but it was never designed to take on an entire invasion fleet single-handedly. They needed a new strategy, or they would be nothing but expanding plasma in the next few minutes. Torres, can you give me a detailed scan of the planet's magnetic field generators? Torres worked his console frantically while plasma bolts continued to hammer their failing shields. Ma'am, there are 17 active generators in underground complexes across the northern continent. They're designed to work in coordination to maintain planetary defense systems. An idea began to form in Chen's mind, desperate and dangerous, but possibly their only chance of survival. Can those generators be overloaded? I'm not sure what you mean, ma'am. If we fed them enough energy, could we create a magnetic pulse strong enough to disrupt the enemy fleet's electronics? Torres ran rapid calculations on his tactical computer. Theoretically, yes, but it would require dumping our entire reactor output directly into the planetary magnetic grid. The feedback would likely destroy our ship. Chun looked around the bridge at her crew. These people had followed her across 16 light years to save strangers, and now she was asking them to sacrifice their lives for the chance to give those strangers a fighting chance. Ma'am, Jackson said quietly, the Fury is reporting successful Marine deployment. All pods have reached the surface safely. Chun nodded grimly. The Marines were planet-side, which meant Phase 1 of the mission was complete. Now came the hard part. Attention, all hands, Chun announced over the ship's intercom. We are going to attempt an electromagnetic pulse attack on the enemy fleet. This will likely result in the destruction of our ship. All non-essential personnel report to the escape pods immediately. Essential crew, prepare for emergency reactor overload procedures. The response was immediate and exactly what Chun had expected from her crew. Not a single person moved toward the escape pods. Ma'am, Torres said with a slight smile, I believe the crew's position is that we're all essential personnel. Chun felt a surge of pride in her people that almost brought tears to her eyes. This was what made humanity special in the galaxy. When the chips were down and impossible odds stared them in the face, humans didn't calculate survival percentages. They did what was right. Very well, Chun said. Torres, begin emergency reactor overload. Target the primary magnetic field generator on the northern continent. We'll have one shot at this. The Defiant's engines began to whine at frequencies that human ears were never meant to hear. The ship's reactor, designed to power a vessel through interstellar space, was being pushed far beyond its safety limits. Ma'am, incoming transmission from the enemy fleet, Kim reported. The alien commander's voice came through the speakers, now carrying a note of genuine respect. Human vessel, your bravery is noted but pointless. Surrender now, and your crew will be treated according to the laws of war. Chun leaned forward toward the communication pickup. Unknown vessel. This is Commander Sarah Chun of the United Earth Space Force. We do not surrender while innocent civilians are under threat. You should have withdrawn when we gave you the chance. There was a long pause before the alien responded. Then, you will die with honor, human. We will remember your sacrifice. Torres, reactor status? Overload in 30 seconds, ma'am. Magnetic pulse will propagate across the entire system. On the planet's surface, Chin knew that Captain Morrison and his Marines were fighting their way through alien occupation forces toward the Zephyrian research facility. Everything depended on what happened in the next few minutes. The tactical display suddenly lit up with new contacts. Chin's heart leaped as she recognized the sensor signatures of human warships dropping out of hyperspace at the edge of the system. Ma'am, it's Captain Rodriguez with the Wolf 359 Patrol Group, Kim announced with barely contained excitement. 3 light cruisers coming in fast. Rodriguez's voice crackled over the communication system. Chun, this is Rodriguez. Sorry we're late to the party. What's your tactical situation? Rodriguez, we're attempting an electromagnetic pulse attack on the enemy fleet, Chun replied quickly. Stand clear of the planetary magnetic field for the next 2 minutes. Then, move in to support the Marines. Understood. Good luck, Sarah. Chun looked at her crew one more time. Torres, initiate reactor overload. All hands, brace for electromagnetic pulse. The Defiance reactor output spiked to levels that should have been physically impossible. Energy flowed through specially configured conduits toward the planet's surface, where it fed into the Zephyrian magnetic field generators with devastating effect. The planet's magnetosphere suddenly blazed with coruscating energy that could be seen from orbit. Massive electromagnetic pulses rippled outward from Talaxis Prime, like stones thrown into a cosmic pond. The effect on the alien fleet was immediate and catastrophic. Ships that had dominated orbital space with their advanced technology suddenly went dark as their electronics were overwhelmed by the magnetic storm. Weapons went offline, maneuvering thrusters failed, and life support systems flickered as electromagnetic chaos washed over the entire system. The Defiant shuddered as the feedback pulse reached them. Lights failed throughout the ship as the overloaded reactor finally reached critical failure. But they had succeeded. The alien fleet was crippled, drifting helplessly in orbit around a planet they could no longer bombard. Emergency power restored, Torres reported, his voice hoarse from the strain. Man, we did it. The enemy fleet is dead in space. Chun allowed herself a moment of savage satisfaction as she watched the tactical display show dozens of powerless alien warships. The electromagnetic pulse had worked even better than she'd hoped, completely disabling every ship in the enemy fleet. Rodriguez, the orbital threat is neutralized, Chun transmitted. Move in and provide close air support for the Marines. We need to secure that research facility before the aliens can restore their systems. On the planet's surface, the real battle was just beginning. Captain Morrison and his Marines had landed in a war zone, and now they had to fight their way through hostile territory to reach the Zephyrian survivors. But at least now they would have air support and orbital cover. The aliens had begged for salvation, and human Marines were storming through the smoke to provide it. The tide of battle was turning, but the hardest fighting was yet to come. Captain James Morrison hit the ground running as his drop pod's retro thrusters fired one final time before impacting the scarred surface of Talaxis Prime. The pod's armored hatch blew open with a sharp crack, revealing a landscape that looked like the surface of hell. Morrison rolled out of the pod with practiced efficiency, his combat armor's heads-up display immediately cataloging threats and tactical information. Around him, 47 other pods had landed in a rough perimeter, each one disgorging 12 heavily armed Marines into the smoky wasteland that had once been a Zephyrian city. Alpha Company, sound off, Morrison commanded over the tactical net. First platoon, all accounted for, came the reply from Lieutenant Sarah Park, her voice crisp despite the chaos around them. Second platoon, ready for action, reported Lieutenant Marcus Stone. Third platoon, locked and loaded, added Lieutenant Elena Vasquez. Fourth platoon, ready to rock, concluded Lieutenant David Kim. Morrison surveyed the devastation around them with the eye of a professional soldier. The city that had once housed nearly 1 million Zephyrians was now nothing but smoking rubble and twisted metal. Alien aircraft moved through the smoky sky like mechanical vultures, their dark hulls bristling with weapon systems. "Marines, listen up," Morrison said over the company frequency. "We've got 5 hours to reach the research facility and extract the Zephyrian survivors. Intelligence suggests heavy enemy presence between us and the target. Rules of engagement are weapons-free on any hostile contacts." The tactical display in Morrison's helmet showed their objective as a blinking red dot 12 kilometers to the north. The Zephyrian research facility was built into the side of a mountain, its underground levels protected by layers of rock and advanced defensive systems. If any Zephyrians had survived the orbital bombardment, they would be there. "Sir, contact front," called Sergeant Rodriguez from First Squad. Multiple hostiles approaching from the east. Morrison raised his assault rifle and peered through the tactical scope. Through the smoke and debris, he could see the first alien ground forces they'd encountered since landing. The enemy soldiers were tall, reptilian creatures in powered armor that made them look like mechanical dinosaurs. They moved with predatory grace, their weapons scanning for targets. "Count 12 hostiles, infantry configuration," Rodriguez continued. "They don't look friendly." Morrison studied the approaching aliens through his rifle scope. These weren't the same species that had been commanding the orbital fleet. These appeared to be ground troops, probably from a client race that the hegemony used for occupation duties. "First platoon, take them," Morrison ordered. The Marines opened fire with disciplined precision. Human pulse rifles sent streams of high-energy particles downrange, striking the alien soldiers with devastating effect. The enemy troops were heavily armored, but human military technology had been designed with the assumption that any alien enemies would likely have superior defensive capabilities. The firefight lasted less than 30 seconds. When the smoke cleared, 12 alien soldiers lay motionless in the rubble, their advanced armor no match for human determination and superior training. "Clean kills," reported Park. "No casualties on our side." Morrison nodded with grim satisfaction. The Marines had trained for this kind of combat for years, studying every piece of intelligence on potential alien military capabilities. It was good to know that training was paying off. "Move out, people. We've got a lot of ground to cover." The Marines advanced through the ruined city in tactical formation, with scouts ranging ahead and heavy weapons teams providing overwatch. The devastation around them was heartbreaking. Zephyrian cities were usually works of art, with graceful spires and gardens integrated into the urban landscape. Now everything was ash and broken stone. "Sir, I'm reading life signs ahead," reported Corporal Martinez from the sensor team. "Looks like a group of civilians trapped in a collapsed building." Morrison called a halt and moved up to examine the situation. The building had been a residential complex, but alien bombardment had brought down most of the structure. His suit's sensors detected at least 20 Zephyrian biomarkers in what appeared to be a basement shelter. "Second squad, get those people out of there," Morrison ordered. "Third and fourth squads, establish a perimeter. We might have company." The Marines went to work with practiced efficiency. Combat engineers used plasma cutters to clear debris while medics prepared to treat any injured civilians. It was dangerous work, exposing them in the open while enemy forces were still active in the area, but no Marine would leave civilians trapped if they could help it. "Got movement to the north," called out Private Jackson from his overwatch position. "Looks like more of those lizard soldiers, maybe 20 strong." Morrison checked his tactical display. The approaching enemy force was moving directly toward their position, probably drawn by the sounds of the rescue operation. "How long to get those civilians clear?" Morrison asked the engineering team. 5 minutes minimum, sir," replied Staff Sergeant Williams. "The debris is pretty thick." Morrison made his decision. "Park, take your platoon and intercept those hostiles. Don't let them get close to the rescue operation." First platoon moved out immediately, using the rubble for cover as they advanced toward the enemy position. Morrison watched the tactical display as the two forces closed with each other, preparing for another firefight. The aliens opened fire first, their weapons sending bright energy bolts through the smoky air. The Marines took cover and returned fire with their characteristic precision, each shot carefully aimed to maximize effect while conserving ammunition. "Sir, these ones are better equipped than the last group," Park reported over the tactical net. Their armor is absorbing more damage. Morrison frowned. If the aliens were bringing up better troops, it meant they were taking the human intervention seriously. The Marines would need to adapt their tactics accordingly. Use armor-piercing rounds, Morrison ordered, and watch your flanks. They might try to surround us. The firefight intensified as both sides sought tactical advantage. The alien troops were skilled and well-equipped, but they were facing human Marines who had been training for this kind of combat since childhood. Every Marine had grown up hearing stories of impossible victories and last-ditch stands, and they fought with the knowledge that the entire galaxy was watching. Contact down, Park announced. All hostiles eliminated. We lost Martinez and Thompson to enemy fire. Morrison felt the familiar weight of command settle on his shoulders. Good Marines had died protecting civilians they'd never met, on a world most of them couldn't pronounce. But that was what they'd signed up for when they put on the uniform. Civilians are clear, reported Williams. 23 survivors, mostly injured but alive. Morrison looked at the group of rescued Zephyrians. They were a family group, ranging from elderly adults to young children. Their large eyes were filled with terror and confusion, but also with growing hope as they realized that salvation had arrived. An elderly Zephyrian stepped forward, his ceremonial robes torn, but his bearing still dignified. "You are the human warriors," he said in heavily accented English. "We heard your ships arrived, but we did not dare to hope." "We're going to get you to safety," Morrison replied. "Can you tell us about the research facility? Are there survivors there?" The Zephyrian nodded eagerly. "Yes, many are there. High Counselor Vextari leads the resistance from the deep shelters, but the invaders have surrounded the facility. They bring more troops every hour." Morrison studied his tactical map. The research facility was still 8 kilometers away, and if the aliens were reinforcing their positions there, the Marines would face increasingly difficult opposition. "Sir," Park said quietly, "we're getting reports from the other landing zones. Second Company ran into heavy resistance near the spaceport. Third Company is engaged with enemy armor units. We're not the only ones having a bad day." Morrison nodded grimly. The aliens weren't going to give up easily. They wanted the Zephyrian technology badly enough to commit significant ground forces to the occupation. "All right, Marines," Morrison announced over the company frequency. "We got 8 clicks to go and unknown enemy strength between us and the objective. The Zephyrians are counting on us, and I'll be damned if we let them down. Move out." The Marines resumed their advance through the ruined city, now accompanied by the civilian refugees they'd rescued. It wasn't ideal to have non-combatants slowing them down, but Morrison couldn't leave the Zephyrians behind to face alien retribution. As they moved through the devastated landscape, Morrison's tactical sensors began picking up increasing signs of enemy activity. The aliens were mobilizing everything they had to prevent the Marines from reaching the research facility. "Sir, aerial contact incoming," reported Corporal Davis from Air Defense. "Looks like one of their attack craft." Morrison looked up to see an alien aircraft diving toward their position, its weapons charging for an attack run. The sleek Predator-like craft was moving fast and low, tried to use the urban terrain to mask its approach. "Take it down," Morrison ordered. The Marines' shoulder-fired missiles streaked upward toward the attacking aircraft. The pilot tried evasive maneuvers, but human anti-aircraft weapons have been designed specifically to deal with advanced alien technology. The missiles struck home, sending the craft spiraling into the rubble in a ball of flame. "Nice shooting," Morrison said with satisfaction. "But where there's one, there's usually more." Sure enough, his sensors were already detecting additional aircraft moving toward their position. The aliens were throwing everything they had at the Marine advance, trying to stop them before they could reach the research facility. Morrison looked at his Marines and the Zephyrian civilians depending on them. They'd come this far against impossible odds, and they weren't going to stop now. Somewhere ahead in the smoke and chaos, High Counselor Vextari and his people were fighting for survival. The aliens had made a mistake when they chose to slaughter innocent civilians. Now they were about to learn what happened when human Marines decided to take something personally. "Marines," Morrison called out as enemy aircraft filled the sky above them. "Remember what we're fighting for. Those people up there are counting on us. Let's show these bastards what happens when they mess with our friends." The Marines roared their approval and continued their advance into the heart of the battle zone, where the final confrontation with the alien invaders was waiting. The final approach to the Zephyrian research facility was a nightmare of smoke, fire, and alien death machines. Captain Morrison crouched behind the twisted remains of a hover transport, studying the massive complex built into the mountainside ahead of them. The facility's outer defenses were swarming with enemy troops. Morrison counted at least 200 hostiles in various defensive positions, with more arriving every few minutes. Heavy weapons emplacements had been set up to cover all approaches, and alien aircraft patrolled overhead in tight formations. "Sir, that's a lot of bad guys between us and the objective," observed Lieutenant Park, peering through a rifle scope at the enemy positions. Morrison nodded grimly. His Marines had fought their way through 8 kilometers of occupied city, leaving a trail of alien bodies behind them. But they lost good people in the process. 12 Marines had fallen during the advance, and another 18 were wounded but still fighting. "Status report from the orbital assets." Morrison asked his communications specialist. "Sir, Commander Chun reports the electromagnetic pulse effect is starting to wear off," replied Sergeant Williams. "Enemy ships are beginning to restore power. We've got maybe 30 minutes before they can resume orbital bombardment." Morrison studied the tactical situation with growing urgency. The Marines had to breach the enemy perimeter and reach the Zephyrian survivors before the alien fleet could rain death from space again. Once that happened, everyone on the planet would die. "Sir, incoming transmission from inside the facility," Williams announced. High Counselor Vextari's voice crackled through the communication system, barely audible over the sounds of battle. "Human warriors, can you hear us? We have sealed the deep vaults, but the invaders are using cutting tools to breach our final defenses. Time grows short." Morrison keyed his communicator. "Counselor, this is Captain Morrison, Earth Colonial Marines. We're outside your facility now. How many survivors do you have?" "Nearly 3,000 souls remain in the deep shelters," Vextari replied. "But the invaders will break through our barriers within the hour. The project's sanctuary data has been prepared for emergency transmission to your ships." Morrison felt a surge of hope. If the Zephyrians could transmit the defensive technology data to the human fleet, then, even if they failed to rescue the survivors, the mission wouldn't be a complete loss. "Counselor, can you upload the data now?" Morrison asked. "Negative, human captain. The transmission requires a direct line-of-sight communication relay to bypass enemy jamming. Someone must reach the primary communication array on the facility's upper level." Morrison studied the facility's schematic on his tactical display. The communication array was positioned on the highest accessible level, directly in the middle of the heaviest enemy concentration. "Park, Stone, Vasquez, Kim," Morrison called to his platoon leaders. Platoon leaders meeting now. The 4 lieutenants gathered around Morrison's position, each one bearing the scars of the fighting they'd endured to reach this point. "Here's the situation," Morrison began. "We need to secure that communication array so the Zephyrians can transmit their research data. The array is heavily defended, and we've got limited time before orbital bombardment resumes." "Sir," Stone said quietly, "that's essentially a suicide mission. There's no way to reach that position without going through the entire enemy force." Morrison nodded. "I know. That's why I'm going alone." The reaction from his platoon leaders was immediate and predictable. "Sir, with respect, that's crazy," Park protested. "You'd never make it." "She's right," Vasquez added. "We go together or not at all." Morrison looked at his Marines with a mixture of pride and frustration. They were willing to follow him into hell itself, but someone had to think strategically about the mission. "People, listen to me," Morrison said firmly. 3,000 Zephyrian civilians are going to die if we don't get that data transmission through. The technology they've developed could save millions of lives throughout the galaxy. This is bigger than any of us. Kim studied the tactical display with the analytical mind that had made him Morrison's best strategic planner. "Sir, what if we create multiple diversions? If we can draw enemy attention away from the array, you might have a chance." Morrison felt a spark of hope. "Explain." "For simultaneous attacks on different parts of the perimeter," Kim continued. "Each platoon hits a different target at maximum intensity. The aliens will have to respond to multiple threats simultaneously, which should thin out the defenses around the communication array." Morrison studied the plan with growing appreciation. It was still incredibly dangerous, but it might actually work. "All right," Morrison decided. "Here's how we play it. Each platoon picks a target and hits it hard. I'll use the confusion to reach the array." "Questions?" "Sir," Park asked, "what about extraction? How do you get out once the transmission is complete?" Morrison was quiet for a long moment. They all knew the answer to that question, but nobody wanted to say out loud. The mission is to save the Zephyrians and transmit the data, Morrison said finally. Everything else is secondary. The platoon leaders exchanged glances. They'd served with Morrison long enough to know when he'd made up his mind about something, and they also knew better than to waste time arguing with him. "All right, Marines," Morrison said. "Synchronize your chronometers. Attack begins in 15 minutes. Give me 5 minutes to reach the array, then hit your targets with everything you've got." As the platoon leaders returned to their units, Morrison checked his equipment one final time. His assault rifle was fully loaded, his armor's power cells were at maximum charge, and his sidearm was secure in its holster. More importantly, he carried the hopes of 3,000 innocent civilians and the future security of human space. Morrison looked at the Zephyrian refugees they'd rescued during their advance through the city. The elderly leader who had spoken to them earlier approached with his characteristic dignified bearing. "Human Captain," the Zephyrian said quietly, "my name is Scholar Talnash. I understand what you attempt to do for my people. The debt we will owe can never be repaid." Morrison shook his head. "No debt, Scholar. This is what friends do for each other." Talnash placed his long, graceful hand over his heart in the traditional Zephyrian gesture of deepest respect. "Then, know that your sacrifice will be remembered for as long as Zephyrian children draw breath." Morrison nodded and turned toward the enemy-held facility. 15 minutes later, the mountainside erupted in gunfire as 4 Marine platoons launched simultaneous attacks on the alien defensive positions. The effect was exactly what Morrison had hoped for. Confused by multiple threats appearing at once, the alien commanders began shifting troops to reinforce threatened positions. The carefully coordinated defense began to unravel as units moved to meet the new attacks. Morrison sprinted from cover, using the chaos to mask his approach to the facility's main entrance. His armor stealth systems helped him avoid detection, but he knew that wouldn't last long once he got inside. The facility's corridors were filled with smoke and the sound of cutting tools as alien engineers worked to breach the sealed barriers protecting the Zephyrian survivors. Morrison moved through the complex like a ghost, avoiding patrols and eliminating sentries with silent efficiency. The communication array was located in the facility's central tower, 3 levels above ground. Morrison climbed through maintenance shafts and emergency passages, following the facility's schematics that Vextari had transmitted to his suit's computer. He reached the array chamber to find 6 alien guards positioned around the sophisticated communication equipment. Morrison checked his rifle's ammunition counter. 18 rounds remaining. Not ideal odds, but he'd faced worse. Morrison burst through the chamber's access hatch, his rifle already firing. The first alien guard went down before he could raise his weapon. The second managed to get off a wild shot that burned the air beside Morrison's helmet before a precisely placed burst put him down permanently. The remaining 4 guards took cover behind the communication equipment, forcing Morrison to be more careful with his shooting. He couldn't afford to damage the array they'd come so far to secure. The firefight was intense, but brief. Morrison's superior training and the advantage of surprise carried the day, though he took a plasma burn across his left shoulder that made his armor's damage indicators flash red. With the chamber secure, Morrison activated the communication array and established contact with the deep shelters. "Counselor Vextari, this is Morrison. The array is secure. Begin data transmission immediately." "Captain Morrison, you magnificent human. The transmission begins now," Vextari replied. "The data will upload to your ships within 2 minutes." Morrison established a defensive position covering the chamber's entrances. He could hear alien troops moving through the facility's corridors, searching for the intruder who had penetrated their defenses. "Morrison, this is Commander Chun," came a voice over the tactical net. "We're receiving the data transmission now. 60 seconds to completion." Outside the facility, Morrison could hear the sounds of his Marines fighting desperately against overwhelming odds. They were giving everything they had to buy him the time he needed to complete the mission. 30 seconds, Chun reported. Alien troops appeared at both entrances to the chamber, their weapons already firing. Morrison dove behind a control console as energy bolts filled the air around him. His rifle answered with precisely aimed bursts that forced the attackers back momentarily. 10 seconds, Chun announced. Morrison's ammunition counter read 0. He drew his sidearm and prepared for the aliens' final rush. These creatures had slaughtered innocent civilians and attempted to steal technology that could doom the galaxy to conquest. They were about to learn what happened when they made that mistake. Transmission complete. Mission announced. All ships, we have the data. Morrison smiled grimly as the alien troops burst into the chamber. He'd completed the mission. The Zephyrians would survive. The defensive technology would be shared with peaceful species throughout the galaxy, and the alien hegemony's expansion would face serious opposition. The aliens fired, and Captain James Morrison of the Colonial Marines went down fighting, taking 3 more enemies with him. But in the deep shelters below, 3,000 Zephyrian civilians lived to see another day. High above the planet, human ships were already transmitting the defensive technology data throughout the galaxy. The aliens had come seeking conquest and found only death and failure. In the end, that was the difference between humanity and species like the hegemony. When innocent people begged for salvation, humans answered the call, no matter the cost. The galaxy would never be the same, and the stars themselves would remember the day human marines stormed through the smoke to save a peaceful world from destruction. The aliens had begged for mercy when the battle turned against them. They received exactly as much as they had shown the Zephyrian children.